war is, and the consequences of being a soldier are quite terrible. And you look at the recent events, 2 ex-military people suffering from PTSD just did horrible things and killed a lot of people because of their mental illness. So killing leads to killing, one way or another. You may save a country and then you go mad and kill a bunch of people 50 years later. You're living in a hell realm. So these are complex matters. What we're doing here is trying to purify our consciousness, a consciousness that is pure, but our ability to realize the purity of that, to know it for ourselves, to understand the world in a way that doesn't try to resolve the world, but only to know that the world is like this. It's full of violence, delusion, cruelty, inhumanity. We're trying to bring forth the best that we can from our own humanity. And if this kind of blessing is practiced, and if this kind of diamond knowledge is illuminated in the world, then it may help people to understand something very precious that is beyond the world, and it may help them pass that knowledge to others so that the thread of that is not lost, so that not everyone lives in a state of delusion or despair or succumbs to those kind of states. There are many qualities that help us to illuminate that knowledge. There are the 4 Brahma Viharas. I think the state of loving kindness, which precedes and precipitates the state of compassion, which precedes and precipitates the state of rejoicing, and then eventually also the rejoicing becomes silent because all conditions are brought to a point of peace in the heart. And the heart is not moved by worldly conditions. It's a very difficult state to understand, let alone embody or bring to life within us. But it is possible. So to avoid killing at every level, you can also kill with words. You can kill with looks. You can kill with attitudes, with opinions. So the goodness within us is to be kept alive and well, and therefore we practice this silencing of the mind so that we can revive and bring light, radiate that light of goodness within us more and more, and be guided by it. The world will always be engaged in these kind of embroilments because human beings are caught in ignorance and we cannot rescue everyone. But if we can rescue ourselves from violence, from ill will, subdue the passions, spread kindness, compassion, and joy in this world, it's a medicine, a very beautiful medicine, most powerful medicine. Even if somebody is very sick or somebody is in danger of dying and you can't help them, but you bring this medicine, then it gives them peace. We may not be able to make peace in the world where there are wars, but we can offer moments of peace to each other, to ourselves, so that we can live a beautiful life. And at least one life will shine in this world. 2 or more, many. So the light doesn't go out. People continue to kill themselves or each other. We can't stop that, but we can work in our own little garden and keep planting and watering this tree of knowledge, of Dhamma, of understanding, of shade and protection, of safety, of refuge for everyone. And we may ourselves be quite flawed in the way we do it, but at least we're trying. We want to do the best we can in that. So to not hate people because they do terrible things, but not to condone their actions, and not to lose sight of whatever goodness there may be in those beings that may have killed. Look at Angulimala. He was a notorious murderer at the time of the Buddha, and he killed almost 1,000 people. But then he met the Buddha. He wanted to kill the Buddha because the Buddha was trying to stop him, and he did stop him. But he didn't stop him by war. He stopped him by wisdom, by appealing to his knowledge, his knowing, his ability to surrender to love, to goodness, to the truth of what he had in him, even though he had committed all those acts. And then when Angulimala became a bhikkhu and he was enlightened, the Buddha gave him this mission in his life that he could chant for beings, especially for women that are bearing a child. In the pain of childbirth, we do an Angulimala chant to give that woman comfort in her pain so that she could successfully, easily, without pain, give birth to that child, give life. So in the name of the greatest murderer, we are calming the birth of little babies. This was the Buddha's wonderful paradox of teaching. Out of such notoriety and ignorance can come the jewel of granting comfort to one bearing a new life. And so it's as if many times over, Angulimala's victims have a good birth. So the mystery of this karmic universe, we cannot truly fathom it, but we can be in awe of it, trust that this formula works, saving life, protecting each other, encouraging the wholesomeness, the virtue, rather than the vice. And with that, I would say rather than the device. Because if the devices start meditating for us, what's that? And the world is now in a device epidemic. There's a lot of good that comes from it too. And in fact, this whole Zoom meeting we're on devices here. But it can also be very expensive for the human race when people are not reciting precepts and keeping them in body, speech, and thought. So the restraint, the guardrails, the tracks to follow inwardly and outwardly, they need strengthening.
What is the purpose of sharing the merit with others?
All of us can help each other. The qualities of love and kindness are shared, and they can affect other people. You know, there's a beautiful story in the Jatakas about one of the Buddha's past lives when he was king of the monkeys. There was a hunter that got lost in the forest, and this monkey king took pity on the hunter and saved his life and helped him to get out of the forest. And then the hunter threw a rock at the monkey and hurt him. But the monkey had taken a vow of sila, of virtue, for his whole life, that he would not commit any unkind act. So he took pity on the human being and he said, "You're a human being and you didn't know what you were doing because you thought you could eat me. So I'm not going to hurt you." And even though this hunter had harmed him, the monkey still let him go. So it's very poignant when we make an adhitthana, a determination. Adi means highest, and thana is foundation. So adhitthana is the highest foundation, one of the paramitas that helps us realize the deathless. If we have a determination not to kill, but to save life, not to take things that are not given, not to deceive or abuse the trust of others by body, speech, or mind, to be truthful, but also not to abuse people with our speech. Upholding virtue definitely has an effect on other people. To emulate the highest, it's an adhitthana. So it's a foundation that raises the heart to a higher level, to cultivate goodness. So the foundations are truth and wisdom, generosity, and the mental cultivation, the peace of mind, the stillness of mind that enables us to create a place in the heart where nibbana can arise. To me, that's meritorious, but it's better to do things without thoughts of self, without going to what am I going to get out of this, but just to uphold the highest because it is the highest, and because the truth only can be realized truly if the heart is pure. So the Buddha gives us a formula: generosity, contentment, and skillful conduct. This skillful conduct is not only in speech and action, but it's in thought. So if the mind is purified through our meditation practice and through being so mindful and wise, like awake, wisely present, bearing witness moment by moment to what is arising and ceasing in the mind, then when there are impure thoughts and we try to remove them, just like when something spills on your beautiful carpet, you rush to clean it. Think of the mind as this beautiful skill or instrument that we're in charge of. We're the caretakers of it. So to me, caretaking the mind is the most noble task of a human being. That's meritorious. With a noble mind, we can practice kindness. We can practice compassion. We can rejoice at the well-being of others, the happiness of others. And we can develop enough equanimity and peace of mind to realize awakening, the highest potential that we as humans have. That is meritorious. Whether there's a bank account and you drop your merit pennies in it or not, I cannot say. But my teacher in Burma, Sayadaw U Pandita, did tell me once when I was coming for an interview and I went through the door very mindfully and through the next door very mindfully. But he asked me after I'd come in, were you mindful when you came in the gate? And when he asked me that question, I realized that I hadn't been as mindful as I thought. Because looking back, when you're climbing a mountain or you're walking down a trail, looking back, you can see your footprints and you can see how sloppy you were, how you knocked over some flowers, or you stepped on somebody's plants. You didn't mean to, but the mindfulness wasn't that accurate. And so I said to him, no, because I realized that I wasn't that aware. I might have been mindful for half a second when I pushed the door open, but I didn't notice when I turned the handle. I didn't notice when I put my hand up to the door. I didn't notice my closing of the door. Mindfulness to be rich, to be complete, to be continuous, to be at the highest level, has to be a moment by moment awareness so that no other thoughts or wishes or distractions sneak in, creep in, and weaken our ability to pay attention. We can be distracted by sight, sound, smells, taste, and touch sensations. So imagine if you're walking into the kuti, the dwelling of your teacher, and you're a little nervous. So you mindfully open the gate, but then you don't notice it closing. And then you walk up to the next door, but you haven't noticed your footsteps as you walked up to the next door. Lots of gaps. So that wasn't very mindful. And then when he pointed it out to me, I had this attitude like, why didn't you tell me? Because every moment of breathing counts. It all counts. Everything that we breathe, every moment, everything that we do counts. So if we say words that are cruel or unkind, we can feel that right away. If we don't feel it, we have a problem. We need to develop more awareness of how we speak. If our actions are rude or thoughtless to others, we have a problem. We're not being mindful enough. We should be aware of that. That's meritorious. That is noble. So I cannot speak to the concept of merit and merit making, but I can tell you that the Eightfold Noble Path is a noble path, and the steps, the 8 folds of that path are actually many, many folds. And one of them is the determination to bring our mindfulness to a sharpness and a fullness that will cover all our acts, bodily acts, words that come out, thoughts, even our thoughts. So this is why the name of our hermitage is Sati Saraniya. Sati is to remember. Remembering, to be aware, is sati. We don't always remember. Do you know that saraniya also means to remember? But it has another meaning, and the other meaning is to reconcile, to take refuge, and to reconcile. What is this reconciliation? It's about forgiveness. To be able to forgive ourselves and each other when we're not mindful, when we don't remember, when we aren't present, when we're not fully aware of what we're doing, and we don't realize the consequences of our actions, speech, and even our thoughts. So the merit to be made there is to pick up the whole path and practice sati, mindfulness, and sarana, saraniya. The saraniya dhammas are dhammas of reconciliation, where we practice verbal, we practice actions, that are wholesome, verbal ways of speaking that are kind, compassionate, wholesome, and even guard our ways of thinking, our attitudes. Like if we notice how many times a day, that would be much more important to be aware of than how much merit are we making. But how many times a day have we been convinced that we were mindful, but we weren't? Can we look back and see, did we really step carefully over that person's flower bed? Did we really open that door mindfully? Did we really eat that meal mindfully? Did we really speak kindly to that person? Did we really have a good attitude to somebody else applying for the job you want and they got it? How does it feel? Do we have kindness? Do we have a rejoicing for them? That's mudita. Mudita is the ability to take care of the mind when we feel resentful. To get in there and practice metta, goodwill, to sweep away that niggly feeling of not liking something that someone said to you. Seeing how kind they are. And are we perfect? What about our own unkindness? So that would be a very important thing to pay attention to. That's sati sampajanya because it's wise, but it's also sati saraniya. We're looking at our actions, our speech, and our thoughts to make sure that there's metta, there's karuna for ourselves if we didn't forgive. If the person doesn't live up to our expectations, can we forgive them? And then if they get the job that we wanted and we're jealous, we need to work on the jealousy. But also, mudita is so helpful because jealousy is ill will, isn't it? But besides covering our own feeling of ill will, what gift can we give to the other person? Mudita, rejoice. Rejoice with them. So glad you got the job. You want to get the highest honor and someone else got it. Rejoice. So these qualities that the Buddha teaches us are so important for vanquishing the obstacles to purification of the mind. And they're called Brahma Viharas, divine abodes. A determination to realize that present moment awareness here and now can be a divine abode. Never mind about the future. What are we doing here and now? Give up bank accounts, merit accounts, any account at all. Just know that every moment counts. And if we're worried about how much we've accumulated, how much good merit, then that's a moment of worry. And we've spent a moment worrying whether we're good enough, and just give up this notion of good self, because the thought of self is such a troublemaker every time. The jealousy, it's about self, me, mine, I. The good, the bad, it's about the self. I'm a good person, I'm a bad person, I hate myself, I love myself. It's the self is causing a lot of division in the mind. And what we really want is to get away from division and go towards a state of unification, unblemished, untarnished, stainless, blotchless, botchless. No bots, no buts. Just this is how it is. And wherever we see a moment that isn't so noble, how can we noble it up? How can we redress it? How can we address it? Not past or future, but right here and now, we can have metta for ourselves. Be well. Be happy. Rejoice in our effort. That we made a determination, okay, we're not perfect. Start over. Keep going. This journey, the path is long. This world is treacherous. That's why we go to present moment awareness for happiness. That's the possibility right there of nobility, of kindness and compassion, where Nibbana will arise. It has to, eventually. If we put in enough adhitthana, enough nekkhamma. Nekkhamma is the giving up of what we don't need. We don't need to be evaluating and measuring up to make sure we have enough. Just keep, like a sculptor, an artist, just keeps working away at the art of being present, of knowing the truth of this moment. So that's remembering, that's sati and that's saraniya. It's reconciling with that which is not noble and turning the earth so that the seed can grow. The little seedling, when you turn the earth, it has a chance, it's getting oxygen, then you put the water in, it's going to grow. It has to. So the present moment awareness is much more important than trying to measure up whether this self is getting enlightened or not. That's full of ego doing something, getting something. It's not a refuge. Because as soon as there's an ego, then the whole world is born here. And we don't want to be reborn in the world over and over again. We want to know the Dhamma of this moment. And that's where the abiding in these Brahma Viharas is so important. And we just keep walking the path in that way. We've really let loose a lot of snakes. They're beautiful aggregates.
Yeah.
We have such lovely snakes here. And there is a little boy that comes to visit us, and we have a stupa that we made out of our local rocks where the snakes hang out. So this little kid discovered the snake that hides in the rock, and when he comes, he runs right over there, kneels down looking for the snake. And often you can see one of them sitting there with his head hanging out, looking at the little boy. And it's such a wonderful thing that we have this sanctuary here where children can come and experience nature without fear, and so blesses us with its presence. We don't go around handling it. We did once when there was a snake that was obviously thirsty, and it was following in the grass, and we didn't know what's wrong with this snake. Why isn't it running away? So we got a bucket of water. It was a drought time, so it was obviously dehydrated, and we were able to lean the bucket towards it, and it stuck its head into the bucket and drank and drank and drank. It was such a beautiful moment. But unless you stay close to nature and investigate the conditions, seeing the snake, and instead of running away, seeing it came and drank. So the practice of kindness, the practice of compassion, the practice of forgiveness, the practice of developing nobility of mind is the biggest gift to the world. If we practice the Eightfold Noble Path, we have a chance to touch the diamond knowing of our own nature. We have to stay put long enough to allow that nature to reveal itself to us. It's a bit like the snake will forgive us enough for it to get a drink of water. And we did, and it was a glorious experience. And so is the glorious experience of studying the mind, studying the heart enough for us to understand our true nature, letting go those concepts with things that we've read or been taught, ask questions, even get down on your hands and knees and study a grass blade, or sit still in the forest so you can see how the mind can overcome its fear and be present for the miracles of life. The truth of this Dhamma is here and now. It's not tomorrow, and it's not even a retreat. We can do a great retreat and then come back to a life that is in shambles. And we have to ask ourselves, why? Why are we not connecting the dots? Why are we not able to bring the joy of retreat time to the difficult things in our life, to the sick people in our life, to the lack of kindness around us, to the people we work with? Our everyday present moment awareness and ability to see the truth of what we are and what we are not, and live in a Brahma Vihara, these are the wellspring of our awakening. So not to compromise that. Whatever takes the mind to inferior states, to ignoble attitudes, even against people we deeply disagree with, we could still practice kindness by not holding on to a grudge or anger. Is a way of sharing kindness, because it poisons our own mind. It's a reflex action to be upset. So if we spend one moment not forgiving ourselves or someone else for their way of acting or speaking or not living up to our expectations, we're carrying around a deadly bacteria. And it could infect us badly and create a lot more misery than we realize. We're trying to prepare and hone this mental field for the arising of Nibbana, the knowledge of the truth within us. It has to be a very, very pure field of awareness. We keep trying again and again. We fall down, it's okay. Our next mind state depends on how kind we are in this moment to ourselves. We forgive ourselves quickly. We don't have to dwell in hatred towards anyone. We want to dwell in kindness, compassion, and joy. That's refuge. Most powerful medicine.